final year students in all universities, we're talking about their constituent colleges and tertiary institutions, have been directed to report back to class on Monday, October the 5th, as the Ministry of Education commences the progressive reopening of learning institutions. A statement by Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha further stating that the resumption of learning for other classes in both universities, teachers training colleges and TVETs will be announced by their respective councils and boards. This as the Interfaith Council announced the scaling back of some directives affecting the conduct of worship and burials. Chemutai go in with more details.
As the gradual reopening of the country gathers momentum, the Ministry of Education has announced the phased reopening of learning institutions of higher education. Starting Monday, October 5th, final year students who are set to graduate in December have been directed to report back to the various universities and constituent colleges. Also required to report on Monday are the examination classes of teachers training colleges and technical and vocational education training institutions, otherwise known as TVETs.
Those people in universities in the final year who are about to graduate but they can't finish their exams because they have sciences and they must go physically and do their science practicals, can go ahead and do so, bearing in mind the strict COVID protocols.
In-person learning for other classes in the teachers' colleges and the TVETs will be announced by the college boards, while for the universities, the respective councils will, after reviewing their preparedness with regard to COVID-19 protocols, announce the dates of resumption.
I'm more focused on the teacher training colleges because we require the teacher training colleges to open soon so that they clear the students, train the teachers in time for the CBC teacher trainees, which we hope to admit in May.
Before the resumption, the institutions will be required to enforce COVID-19 health and safety protocols and be linked to a health facility prior to reopening. All high-level institutions that had been set aside as quarantine centres must be fumigated. Psychosocial support must be offered to the learners, with public health officials expected to occasionally monitor the operations. According to sources, President Kenyatta held a closed-door meeting with Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha to mull over how to resume learning in the remaining levels.
Learning institutions, therefore, should only be reopened when we have and can sufficiently guarantee the safety of all our children.
This as the Interfaith Council announced more measures that will guide resumption of worship.
God is good.
Worship centres will now be allowed to admit at least 200 people as the duration of services is extended to 2 hours. Worshippers would be required to sit at least 1.2 meters apart to facilitate social distancing.
All the current requirements from the guidelines of hand washing or sanitization stations in the compound, and where possible, temperature checks will still continue in force.
The council noting that weddings and funerals bore the greatest ability of increasing transmission, calling for extra caution.
No food shall be served in funerals. And here we are appealing for the sake of all of us, and especially the elderly, because when we eat, all of us remove our masks.
The council further reviewing the age of congregants, allowing those above the age of 65 and below 6 years old to attend services. Chemutai go in Citizen TV, Nairobi.